Karen parked her camper on my land. She didn't expect to be surrounded by 60 curious cows. The sun was dipping low, painting the Oklahoma plains in hues of gold and crimson, when I first saw the glint of metal on my property. My name's Amos, and I've been tending this stretch of land, 120 acres of rolling grass and stubborn cedar, for 30 years. It's a quiet life, just me, my herd of 60 Angus cows, and the occasional coyote that gets too bold. So, when I spotted a shiny Airstream camper parked smack in the middle of my north pasture, I figured someone had either lost their way or their mind. I grabbed my hat, hopped on the old John Deere, and rumbled toward the intruder. The camper was a gleaming silver beast, all curves and chrome, like something out of a sci-fi flick. A woman stood beside it, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her nose, and a scowl that could curdle milk. She was maybe 40, with a bob haircut so sharp it could slice bread, and a neon yoga outfit that screamed, "I'm not from around here." Her name, I'd soon learn, was Karen. "Evening," I called, cutting the engine. "This is private land. You lost?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "I'm not lost. I'm parked." Her voice had that clipped, city edge, like she was used to people jumping when she snapped her fingers. "Parked?" I raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this ain't a campground. This is my pasture." She finally deigned to glance at me, lowering her sunglasses just enough to peer over them. "Your pasture? Well, it's public domain now. I checked the maps. This is free land for boondocking. I've got every right to be here." I stifled a laugh. Public domain? This woman had clearly spent too much time on those van life blogs. "Ma'am, I've owned this land since before you were born. Deeds in my safe, signed and notarized. You're trespassing." Her lips pursed, and she waved a hand like she was shooing a fly. "I'm not moving. I've got a whole itinerary, sunset yoga, stargazing, content for my Insta. You can't just kick me out." Content? Insta? I didn't know what half of that meant, but I knew a headache when I saw one. "Lady, you've got till morning to move that camper, or I'll call the sheriff." She smirked, undeterred. "Go ahead. I know my rights." I tipped my hat and drove back to the house, figuring a night to cool off might change her tune. But as I sipped my coffee at dawn, I saw that silver monstrosity still squatting in my field. Worse, my cows, 60 of them, bless their curious hearts, had taken an interest. They'd gathered around the camper in a loose circle, sniffing and lowing, their big brown eyes fixed on the shiny intruder. Karen was in for a surprise. By the time I got back to the pasture, Karen was outside, flapping her arms like a deranged scarecrow. "Get these cows away from my camper," she shrieked. "They're leaving slobber on my windows." I leaned against the fence, grinning. "They're just curious. Never seen a spaceship before." "This is not a spaceship. It's a custom Airstream, worth more than your whole farm." She stomped her foot, and one of the cows, Mabel, gave a loud moo, like she was laughing. "Ma'am, I told you to move. Now, if you don't, those cows might just decide your camper's a salt lick." Her face turned beet red. "You're threatening me? I'll sue. I'll have this place shut down." I shrugged. "Suit yourself. But you might want to check your tires first." She froze, then darted to the camper's wheels. Sure enough, one was half buried in the soft earth, and the others were surrounded by cow pies. My herd had been busy. Karen let out a scream that could have woken the dead, and I couldn't help but chuckle. This was going to be a long day. Over the next few hours, Karen's bravado started to crack. She tried to shoo the cows, but they just blinked at her, unmoved. She called a tow truck, but the nearest one was 3 hours away, and the driver laughed when I explained the situation. "Cows, huh? Good luck with that," he said before hanging up. Karen's yoga plans were long forgotten. Her phone battery was dying, and the cows, God love, and we're now lying down around the camper, chewing cud like they'd claimed it as their own. By noon, a new player entered the scene. Old Man Jenkins, my neighbor, who rolled up in his rusty pickup with a grin wider than the Mississippi. Jenkins was a wiry old coot, pushing 80, with a penchant for mischief and a knack for showing up when things got interesting. "Heard you got a city slicker problem," he cackled, eyeing Karen's camper. "Want me to bring the tractor and drag her out?" Karen overheard and marched over, hands on hips. "You touch my camper, and I'll have you arrested." Jenkins winked at me. "Feisty, ain't she? Bet she'd hate to meet my hogs." "Hogs?" Karen's voice hit a new pitch. "You people are insane." I held up a hand. "No hogs, Jenkins. Let's keep this civil. But Jenkins' arrival had shifted the dynamic. Karen was outnumbered, and the cows weren't budging. She retreated to her camper, muttering about lawyers and rural oppression. That afternoon, I decided to try reasoning with her one last time. I knocked on the camper door, and after a long pause, she opened it, looking frazzled. Her perfect hair was a mess, and there was a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "What do you want now?" she snapped. "Look, Karen," I said, keeping my tone even. "I don't know what brought you out here, but this ain't your land. I'm not your enemy. Let's figure this out before it gets uglier." For a moment, her eyes softened, like she might actually listen. Then she shook her head. "I'm not leaving. This is my dream. You wouldn't understand." I sighed and walked away. Some folks, you just can't reach. As the sun set, the situation took a turn I hadn't expected. Jenkins, never one to let a good show end early, had snuck back with a thermos of his infamous moonshine. He offered Karen a cup, claiming it was local tea. To my shock, she took it. Maybe she was desperate, or maybe she just wanted to prove she could hang. Either way, within an hour, Karen was tipsy, laughing with Jenkins like they were old pals. She started telling stories about her divorce, her dead-end job, her dream of living free in her camper. It was the first time I saw her as a person, not just a problem. But the peace didn't last. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of bellowing cows and Karen's screams. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the pasture. The camper was tilted at a crazy angle, half stuck in a ditch. Karen was outside, waving her arms, while the cows milled around, spooked. Jenkins was nowhere in sight. "What happened?" I demanded. "It moved," she cried. "The camper just rolled." I shone my light on the ground. The soft earth had given way under the camper's weight, and one of her ill-advised attempts to drive out had sent it sliding into the ditch. The cows, startled by the noise, had formed a tighter circle, their eyes glinting in the dark. "Stay calm," I said. "We'll get it out in the morning." "Morning?" she wailed. "I'm surrounded by cows. They're going to eat me." I couldn't help it, I laughed. "They don't eat people, Karen. They're just confused. Like you." She glared, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or exhaustion. For the first time, I felt a pang of sympathy. She wasn't just a caricature of entitlement. She was a woman chasing a dream that was falling apart. The next morning, I called in a favor with a local tow company, and they hauled the camper out. Karen watched, silent, as the tow guy worked. The cows, sensing the drama was over, wandered off to graze. I thought that'd be the end of it, but then Jenkins reappeared, looking sheepish. "Amos," he whispered, pulling me aside. "I might have loosened her jacks last night. Thought it'd be funny." I stared at him, torn between anger and amusement. "You old fool. You could have killed her." "Didn't, though," he said, grinning. "Just gave her a story for that Insta thing." I shook my head, but I couldn't stay mad. Jenkins was Jenkins. Trouble followed him like a shadow. When the camper was back on solid ground, Karen surprised me. Instead of driving off or threatening to sue, she walked over, holding a crumpled piece of paper. "This is my number," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this." I took the paper, unsure what to say. "Why'd you park here, Karen? Really?" She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "I just wanted to feel free. For once." I nodded, understanding more than I expected. "Freedom's a tricky thing out here. Comes with a lot of cow pies." She laughed, a real laugh, and for a moment, I thought maybe we'd reached an understanding. But life, like my pasture, is never that simple. Karen's laugh lingered in the air, a fragile bridge between us, but I knew better than to trust a moment like that. Life on the plains taught me that calm often hides a storm. I stuffed her number in my pocket, tipped my hat, and watched as she climbed into her camper. The engine sputtered to life, and the airstream rolled out of my pasture, leaving twin ruts in the grass and a cloud of dust in its wake. My cows, grazing lazily now, didn't even look up. I figured that was the last I'd see of her. But Karen wasn't done with me or my land. A week later, I was mending a fence when Jenkins' pickup roared up, kicking gravel. He leaned out the window, his grin wider than a coyote's. "Amos, you ain't gonna believe this. Your city gal's back." "Back?" My stomach sank. "Where?" "South pasture. Set up camp again, bold as brass. Got a friend with her this time." I cursed under my breath and grabbed my keys. The south pasture was rougher terrain, closer to the creek, and my cows didn't graze there much. If Karen was back, she was either dumber than I thought or up to something. I drove over, Jenkins trailing behind, cackling like a kid at a carnival. Sure enough, there was the Airstream, parked near the creek bank, its awning out and fairy lights strung up like it was a damn music festival. Karen stood beside it, chatting with a lanky guy in a flannel shirt and a man-bun. He looked like he'd stepped out of a craft beer ad, all beard and earnest eyes. My cows, thankfully, were nowhere near, but I could hear their distant moos, like they sensed trouble brewing. I parked and strode over. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice level. "Thought we had an understanding." She turned, and for a second, I saw a flicker of guilt. Then her city girl armor snapped back into place. "Amos, relax. I'm not hurting anything. This is just temporary. Meet Ethan's my videographer." Videographer? I glanced at the guy, who gave me a nod so enthusiastic it nearly dislodged his bun. "Yeah, man," Ethan said, his voice dripping with California cool. "We're shooting a docuseries. Van life vibes. Karen's story is, like, super authentic. Woman breaking free, reclaiming her power, you know?" I stared, wondering if I'd woken up in a different universe. "You're filming a show on my land?" Without asking, Karen crossed her arms. "It's not your land, Amos. I did some digging. This parcel's got a disputed boundary. Public records show it's been in limbo since the 80s. I'm within my rights." I felt my jaw tighten. Disputed boundary? That was news to me, and I'd bet my last dollar she was bluffing. But the way she said it, with that smug tilt of her head, made me wonder. Jenkins, standing behind me, muttered, "She's got some nerve." "Karen," I said, "if you've got proof, show it. Otherwise, pack up and go." Ethan stepped forward, holding up his phone. "Whoa, dude, chill. We're not here to fight. We're creators. This is art. You could be part of it. Like the grumpy cowboy vibe? Total gold." I ignored him. "Karen, you've got 1 hour. Then I'm calling the sheriff." Her eyes narrowed, but before she could snap back, a new sound cut through the air, a low, rumbling bellow. My cows. I turned and saw them, all 60, lumbering toward us from the north pasture. Their heads were down, their hooves kicking up dust. Something had spooked them, and they were headed straight for the camper. Amos," Jenkins said, backing toward his truck. "That don't look good." Karen's face paled. "What's happening? Why are they coming here?" "Stampede," I said, my voice calm but my heart racing. "Something's got him riled. Get in your camper. Now." Ethan fumbled with his camera, muttering, "This is epic footage," until Karen yanked him toward the Airstream. I ran for my truck, Jenkins already in the passenger seat. The cows were closing in, their bellows drowning out Karen's shouts. I gunned the engine and drove parallel to the herd, trying to head them off before they reached the creek. That's when I saw it, a flash of fur in the brush. A coyote, lean and desperate, darting through the grass. It must have gotten too close to the herd, maybe nipped a calf. My cows were protective mothers, and they weren't about to let it slide. But the coyote was leading them straight toward Karen's camper. I honked the horn, waving my hat out the window, trying to turn the herd. Jenkins leaned out, whooping like a rodeo clown. Slowly, the cows veered left, away from the creek, but not before a few stragglers clipped the Airstream's awning, ripping it clean off. Karen's scream echoed over the chaos. By the time the dust settled, the coyote was gone, and the cows had slowed to a confused mill. Karen and Ethan stumbled out of the camper, wide-eyed. The Airstream was still standing, but the awning lay in tatters, and one window was cracked. Ethan's camera dangled from his hand, lens shattered. "You okay?" I called, stepping out of the truck. Karen nodded, her face ashen. That was insane." "Welcome to the country," Jenkins said, grinning. "Ain't no filter for that." I expected Karen to explode, to threaten lawsuits, or call me a reckless hick. Instead, she sank onto a camp chair, staring at the wrecked awning. Ethan muttered something about artistic integrity and started picking up pieces of his camera. For the first time, Karen looked broken. I walked over, unsure what to say. "Look, I didn't plan this. Coyotes happen. You sure you want to stay?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice so quiet I had to strain to hear, she said, "I don't have anywhere else to go. The divorce cleaned me out. This," she gestured at the camper, the creek, the sky, "this was my last shot." I felt that pang again, sharper now. Karen wasn't just a Karen. She was a woman who'd bet everything on a dream, only to find herself surrounded by cows and chaos. I glanced at Jenkins, who shrugged, his usual mischief replaced by something like sympathy. "Tell you what," I said. "You can stay the night. Tomorrow, we'll check those boundary claims. If you're right, we'll talk. If not, you move on. Fair?" She nodded, eyes glistening. Fair. That night, I couldn't sleep. I dug through my files, looking for anything about a disputed boundary. Sure enough, there was a footnote in an old survey, a clerical error from 1983 that never got resolved. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me uneasy. Karen had done her homework. If she pushed this, it could tie up my land in court for years. The next morning, I drove back to the south pasture, expecting to find Karen and Ethan packing up. Instead, I saw a third vehicle, a beat-up Jeep with Colorado plates. A woman stood beside it, short and weathered, with a clipboard and a badge that read County Surveyor. Karen was talking to her, pointing at the creek. My gut twisted. She'd called in the big guns. "Amos," the surveyor said, introducing herself as Clara. "Ms. Campbell here filed a claim with the county. Says this parcel's public domain. I'm here to check it." I shot Karen a look. "You didn't waste time." She met my gaze, unapologetic. "I told you, Amos. I know my rights." Clara spent the day measuring and taking notes, her face unreadable. Ethan filmed her, muttering about narrative arcs. Jenkins watched, muttering about city vultures. By afternoon, Clara called us over. "Folks," she said, "there's a discrepancy. The 1983 survey does suggest this strip by the creek might be public. But it's murky. It'll take weeks to confirm, maybe years in court." Karen's face lit up. "So I can stay?" Clara shook her head. "Not yet. Till it's settled, no one can develop or occupy this land. That means you move, Miss Campbell." Karen's shoulders slumped. I should have felt vindicated, but I didn't. I felt like I'd won a prize nobody wanted. That evening, Karen packed up. Ethan was already gone, muttering about creative differences. Jenkins offered her a thermos of moonshine, but she declined with a sad smile. Before she left, she walked over to me, holding out a USB drive. "My footage," she said. "The docuseries. It's raw, but maybe you'll see me differently." I took it, not sure why. "Safe travels, Karen." She drove off, her camper glinting in the setting sun. The cows watched, chewing cud, as if nothing had changed. But something had. Months later, I finally plugged in the USB. Karen's footage was shaky, unpolished, but raw. She talked to the camera late at night, her voice cracking as she described her ex-wife, the debt, the dream of freedom that kept her going. There were clips of my cows, their curious eyes catching the light, and even a shot of me, yelling during the stampede, looking like a fool. But there was one clip that hit me hard. Karen, alone by the creek, whispering, "I just wanted to belong somewhere." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I'd thought Karen was the villain, a city slicker trampling my land. But she was just human. Flawed, stubborn, desperate. Like me. A year later, Clara called. The survey was finalized. Me land was mine, no disputes. I should have been relieved, but all I could think about was Karen, out there somewhere, chasing a dream that kept slipping away. I never heard from her again, but I kept the USB, a reminder that sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't a line. It's a mess of mud and hooves and hearts, all tangled up together. What do you think? Was Karen wrong to fight for her dream, even if it meant trespassing? Or was I too quick to judge her? Share your thoughts below.